Let's talk now about framing for landscape and cityscapes. We've got a beautiful scene here in the inner harbour here in Sydney. And what I've done, I'm on the 17mm lens, still at f5.6. And what I'm doing is I'm actually framing the shot within a frame. I'm framing within a frame, if that makes sense. What I've done is I'm using the trees in the foreground to draw the eye into the middle part of the frame. Let's talk about the rule of thirds. I've got my sky, maybe if I did that, the sky is about a third away along the horizon. Then we've got about a third down with the water. Then another third is broken up in part by this foliage and the foreground. That would be a true rule of thirds frame. Now, if we were to zoom in to 35, and the reason I'm mentioning this is I'm using a zoom lens today, 17 to 55, but it goes through 17, 35 and 55. So if you were using prime lenses, you could achieve the same look, but obviously it's much faster to work with a zoom. So to frame this one up, I might frame like so, where I've actually got, again, using the pan and tilt to reposition, I've got 2/3 foreground and a third in the sky. And that, again, draws the audience into the part of the frame that I want to draw attention to. I'm also using a little bit of foreground detail, which I'll talk more about later on. Let's go into 55 and focus up. So there, in that frame there, I've got 2/3 foreground, which is the sea, and a third sky. Now, if you wanted to, you could frame like that. That's still using the rule of thirds. I've got a third of the frame being cut by the sea and 2/3 in the sky. So you can alternate it depending on which preference you prefer. This is down to which shot you feel looks the most appropriate. And what you can do in these situations, we've got a ferry about to go past there. On a zoom lens, we can take a wide shot like so, hold that wide shot, go into a 35 and frame it like maybe that. And then if we wanted to go into the 50, frame like so. Now the same principle applies with a landscape as indeed it does with the cityscape. It's essentially the same thing. But looking at this classic shot of Sydney here, I've broken the bottom half of the frame up into the 2/3, leaving the upper third for that classic view. But I'm also positioning the city slightly off to one side. So I'm kind of putting the city in that top crosshair, which leads the eye in, about there, leads the eye naturally up and into the part of the scene which I think I want my viewers to be focusing on. And again, the trees in the foreground are helping pull your eyes into that section. Now, if I go to the 35 and do the same thing, I've now placed the skyline slightly lower down in the frame to let that sea and the harbour really feed in. And it really helps when you've got a boat cutting through frame to draw the eye into the buildings. And then let's push on to 55, tilt up again, and in this time I'm really just framing with the same ratio, if you like, of harbour in the foreground. But that to me is the frame that I feel comfortable with. And you know, this is about how you feel when you shoot the image. Something that you'll develop with more and more practice is a sense of feeling a shot. It's quite natural when you're starting out to try and analyse and try and remember all the things you've learned and studied, and there can be a point where you get analysis paralysis when you've read too many differing opinions. So when you get on location, you're like trying to remember all these different opinions. Just relax and follow these simple rules and see how you get on and try different things.